Harb meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda is 200.5 West Wayne Ave.
I'm Bill Spengler. I'm the broker representing 200.5 West Wayne Avenue. We sold the house on the corner, 200 West Wayne Avenue. I was the agent for that. I told everybody they couldn't tear it down. They had to leave it there, so don't even try. And that was sold the end of January.
What corner is that on, Bill?
Corner of West Wayne and Bloomingdale.
Okay.
And what happened in 1963, the property was subdivided, and the 5 garages went with the house that was built. They were never, since 63, they've been never part of the house, and the people in the apartments never had access to those garages. Since 1963, it was subdivided. The people at 200.5 had access to those garages. They had an easement through 200 West Wayne Avenue. When the property was sold, that easement was taken away. The person would not buy the property with the easement, so the easement was taken away. So those 5 garages set in back of this house, they were built probably in the 30s. You have pictures of them. They're all cinder block, A-frame. There's no access to these garages, and there can't be access to these garages because there's no way to put a driveway all the way down from West Wayne Avenue, because it's they only have a 10-foot side yard, and they have a front steps coming out and back steps coming out, so they would have to be removed to run a garage all the way back there. For the last 30 years, they haven't been used as garages. They've been used as medical storage facility for Mr. DePasco, who was a doctor. He had his doctor's office at 200 West Wayne Avenue in the bottom floor, and he lived on the first floor, and he rented out 2 apartments on the second floor. And as his family got bigger, he wound up having 5 lovely girls. They built a house in '63, which they all grew up in.
The house next door.
The house next
Oh,
door
okay.
is where they grew up.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Part of the problem the township has in that area, and we've just spent $2.5 million at the middle school trying to eliminate the flooding problems, and we're doing everything we can to get rid of macadam upstream. We work with the Arts Center. We worked up near the farmers market, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars putting underground retention. There's no backyard to this property. It's 5 garages and all macadam. So the plan is to tear the 5 garages down, rip up all the macadam, and plant grass. So we would get over a couple $1,000s of grass, a couple thousand square feet of grass there.
Now, who actually owns those garages?
The garages are owned by Mrs. DePasqua, who lives at 200.5. She's owned them since, that's been part of her property since 1963.
Oh, that's the next house down from the corner property.
That's right, the corner property, and the corner property, they lived in the corner property. They own the whole property. In '63, they subdivided off 7,200 square feet, 50 by 185. So the 5 garages went with this property. So since 1963, no one from the apartments had access to these properties. They had nothing to do with the 5-unit apartment house in '63. And he just used it for storage. But he did have access to the pool in there, and he parked there. But everybody in the apartments for all these years park out in the street.
Can you see these from West Wayne Avenue?
Yeah, the house is here, and the apartment's here, so if you look down, you could,
I was looking for them. I
I
couldn't
can
find
actually-
them, that's
You
why.
can- They're easier to be seen on
Bloomingdale, if you look up the
Bloomingdale.
Yes,
driveway.
and I was going to say,
From Bloomingdale, you could see them.
I was
You
gonna
can get to them from Bloomingdale.
You can't now, but
you
you used to
can
be
now.
able
you
to.
could. And I have to say, you're talking about view sheds, and I definitely was very aware of how much can I see these garages. So I wandered around the entire corner along West Wayne, halfway down, just look behind the houses, and because it's set back and down,
Yeah,
it's really, and because of the greenery, it's only really visible if you're dead center in the drive
Yeah.
to the back, so you can see it from Bloomingdale.
Yeah.
But a very small piece, and if you walk like 20 feet either direction, you can't really
yeah.
see much.
Yeah, because there's a hedge all along West Wayne
Right.
Avenue also. They're difficult to see, yeah.
And that was a factor in my head. Andrea, we were just talking about the garages in the first and only item today, and Bill was mentioning, I think he's correct in saying they probably date to 1930s or so. And I
There's
looked,
no stone, it's all cinder
well, I
block.
looked at some atlases today at work, and I seem to think the house at 200 is pretty old, one of the older
Yeah, that was
homes
like
in that
late 1800s.
70s, 80s,
Yeah,
exactly.
But the garages weren't built then.
Exactly, so the garages were not on the 1909 atlas, and they lead me to think cinder block being beginning to be prevalent in the 30s.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking 30s or so. So they were not built in association with that house, which is a factor. Does anyone have other issues or questions or statements?
No.
Well, I think that because, you know, when I first looked at it, I felt that it was a shame to take another auxiliary building down, you know, because you have these buildings that keep disappearing, but if it is not original to the original house, and also the architectural detail, I didn't think there was a lot of it. There were the doors, you know, but that was about it.
There were some rafters exposed. I mean, there was a little bit.
There's a
but
little
It
bit.
seems like it was altered, is my sense. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, to me, it's just an A-frame building. You know, the doors are 1930 doors. But,
Right.
you know, when those doors, you have to put big rocks to keep those. When those doors are all open, it really looks ugly, you know, when you look in.
Because the,
You know, but it's not auxiliary to the big building. It belongs to you know, since '63, it has belonged to the one house, and the problem with selling this house, it has no backyard. And you
Right.
can't use these as garages. There's no access to
There's
using
no
these garages.
access,
So you have these this
right.
big building, and it would seem to me, from the township's perspective, that to rip up 2,500 square feet of garages, and it's all macadam, there's a big parking lot. The whole backyard is 50 feet wide, and it's all macadam, from the garages to the, over the line,
Right.
some of the macadam is on the next door property, 500.
And the other one, element is I was trying to think about this whole, you know, puzzle in a sense of all the pieces, that I did go back and look at our ordinance, and as each district represents a particular period, and that's why it's significant, and that's why we're protecting it, the South Wayne district is particularly valuable or significant for the period of 1870s to the 19-teens. And since this is not an example of that period, I'm not as, you know, feeling strongly like I would with other auxiliary buildings that it's in keeping, or not in keeping, but it's a representation of that, you know, district in a significant sense.
But, you know, if you had access to the garages, you might be able to get a buyer that wants a 5-car garage.
Well, that's true.
You know, even if it's 1930, but the problem is,
There's
you
no
have no
access.
access, so you can't use them as garages. And so, you know, it's my recommendation that, you know, they get them torn down as soon as they can, put grass there, at least you have a backyard.
Right.
And, you know,
And
because
to-
there's no value, you know, to the property if you can't
Right.
access them.
And does the owner of 200 intend to keep the building?
No, it's for sale.
Oh, it's for sale, that's
It's
right.
been for sale, they've both been for sale together.
I'm sorry, 200 and, did you say that was bought in January? I missed.
No, 500, they were both for sale for 900,000.
Okay,
Or you could buy one for 5 and the other for 450 or something. But, and we did have a buyer that you met with that was, you know, we're trying to save the whole thing, and that didn't work out. And then we found a buyer just for the apartments, and that was sold in January. And now the house is for sale for $439. It's a
Okay.
5-bedroom, 3.5 bath house. It's a big house,
right.
but, you know, it has no
But
backyard.
the historic building has been bought at this point,
Yeah, that's separate.
and we hope it's going to stay,
That is going to stay.
so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually sensitive to demolitions, but I think this is a situation where the structure really doesn't add any significance to the historic
Like Beverly said,
district.
it's
And
backed
you can barely see it.
It's backed up
you know.
behind the house and
Yeah.
with trees along his lane, so it's not a
It's
view shed
visible,
that people are
right.
seeing.
Did other people in the audience have issues?
Baron Gemmer, South Wayne. I own a house at the corner of Bloomingdale and West Wayne. Three quick things. First off, I don't disagree with your assessment so far of that and what Bill's presented. Just wanted to clarify a couple things, because in addition to providing a backyard for 200 and a half, I believe it also will help 200 by not having any question about somebody needing to access a garage. You know, 200 and a half somebody couldn't buy 200 and a half and claim, hey, we want access to our garage, and there might be some easement or something required. So
Yeah,
There's
well, I mean, the other thing you could do, which
Come
might
on,
not,
Bill, you always say use the
might not be
Bible.
too good, is somebody that buys this property could give an easement back to the other property, and you could have all those cars back there.
Oh, no, exactly. So it's not only for the backyard itself, but it prevents somebody from claiming an easement later on. The other thing is more of a technicality, which I talked with Beverly and Matt about briefly, in terms of the Harb ordinance itself. Now, Bill's the broker representing that property, and that's fine. Actually, the Harb ordinance, unlike zoning and saldo, doesn't require the applicant to either be the owner, an equitable owner, or power of attorney or something. So in a case like this, it would be nice if the ordinance was changed just to have a letter from the owner or something that proved you were the broker. I'm not questioning it in this case at all. I'm just saying it points to deficiency.
I'll swear to that.
You're fine, Bill. I'm not questioning
The
that.
sign right out front says, "For sale by owner, assisted by the Spingler Agency."
Yeah.
It's right there, right?
But it
But
should
you're
be consistent
suggesting-
with the others, so that you have to have some proof of interest before you're coming.
So it might be an
using up
amendment
your
that
time.
we add.
So
That's a good point.
The
That's a
owner,
good point.
the owner would not have been able to be here.
That's fine.
that's all I have on this. Thank you.
That sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay?
That's
Thank you very much.
any-
Appreciate you.
So would someone like to make a
Okay.
motion?
Motion to approve a certificate of appropriateness?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. As far as the next order of, on the agenda is new business, and I have two very quick items. I'm not sure if this is, Hey, Matt, can you put this up there? There's an event happening in the June 18th to support or help raise funds for the Willows Cottage, which is a township-owned historic property that people are probably familiar with. It's been a great kind of volunteer effort to date, and in partnership with the township, and the event is the summer solstice, June 18th. You can see that, and the tickets are available on the website that I think is mentioned, but it's willowscottage.org, and it's just a good event and good to support a building the township owns that's historic, and we like that. The second thing I'd like to mention, but again, I think I left the actual specifics at home, but I'd like to see if Matt or someone can put on the website of Radnor's website a listserv, a website, but a listserv that the county has begun to assist any historic commissions, Harbs, house museums in the county of kind of sharing conversations about any given item. So for example, just thinking, if the doors, let's say, that are going to be demolished, could be salvaged if Bill would like this, if he has some time, or I can help him, a little message could be put on this listserv, just say, anyone looking for 1930s garage doors, we have them here for the next, 2 weeks, and someone could write back, or if anyone has a question in general, it's a nice way to share, and I think I'll email you guys, or so that maybe you can put that on the Radnor website for anyone who would like to see it.
Well, I think in terms, and I've spoke to Melissa about this before, I've had requests from the EAC and various other committees that we can certainly post a link to a listserv.
Exactly.
But we can't host a listserv.
Oh, no, just
because
posting
it's
the
a
link.
third-party website.
Oh, yeah.
So we can put any link you want, and we can put it, we can front page it temporarily, it's prioritized, and then by news and events, and then it gets
Oh,
bumped.
good.
But then it can be placed permanently if you want on the Harb
I think
portion of
that'd
the
be great,
website.
because it's a great source. I mean, I think it's already 180 organizations that are already, from Delaware County that have joined, and you don't have to join to view it or even add comments, but if you want to, you'll constantly be getting all the emails. So I think it's a nice thing to offer people. Sounds good? Does anyone else have any other issues or items? So there's no old business, so we can adjourn the meeting. Oh, I'm so sorry, yes? Absolutely.
Hi, Baron Gemmer, South Wayne. I'll be very brief. I do watch a lot of the meetings at home, as you might guess, and just a few comments, too. When the plans are up here, the tendency is for people to move away from the mics. So if you could be, I'm surprised Bill did that, because he's usually a sticker at the Board of Commissioners meeting. So if you can make sure that people are always speaking to a mic, whether they move this or I guess we don't have a handheld mic, that's very helpful. It's very hard to hear when they're talking back and forth there. Another issue that I see sometimes is when...
Speaking of which, is that mic on?
Hello? You're hoping it's not, right? Beverly and I were talking before the meeting in terms of hopefully people maybe even come in before their application, so a lot of things are ironed out, and what you would expect in terms of drawings or not, or et cetera, is good. Because a lot of times, too, when the applicants come up, you have questions, and then things either need to be redrawn or redone. And what I have heard sometimes, and you can correct me if you have corrected this, but well, why don't you email that, and we have 10 days to make our decision, and we can do that. And I just want to caution you that that's not what the 10 days is. You have to deliberate in public, or per the Sunshine Law. You have 10 days to put your decision in writing, just like the zoning hearing board has 45 days. It's very similar language. And the planning commission has to vote in public, even though they can
Right.
put conditions on. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, just what you were saying, that I was under the impression, or I guess I was envisioning that the decision was being made in public, but I guess we're receiving the revisions that we were discussed and accepted to make sure yes, this is what we were all talking about. So that's what's happening, not during the meeting. Not so much-
I've heard both. I've heard where it looks like you're tempted to actually, excuse me, I'm starting to hit the mic now, where you've tempted to say, let's email this and then we'll give our
Oh,
decision. I
I
don't know
see
if
what
that's
you're
actually
saying.
happened, but I've heard
We
that.
we give the decision here
But
with
that's a good
conditions.
point.
No, I know that, but, so I've heard you lean.
That's what's really happening. And then when they email us back, we're looking at the revisions done to the drawings.
Oh, no, I understand that. But I've actually heard where you almost went to the point of
did.
not approving in public and waiting to see things and then voting email-wise. I've heard that exact language from
We
you.
almost did, I think
You
you're right.
almost did that. The other one, though, if you're going to do that, and that's, planning does that similar subject to conditions, but what I've seen you when you do that is you approve it with no conditions, and then they're sending you new plans for revisions, so you have no power at that point. You've approved it. It's not, so if you're going to do that, make it subject to something like Dan would make something subject to stormwater at Planning Commission, or subject to, acceptable, roofing or something like
Right.
that. And please, and if you're going to do that, be very specific, so it's not just opening up the whole new one.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, we don't have the right to see it here. It's much harder at the Board of Commissioners to
No,
do
I
that.
think you're
So
right.
I just want to, make sure that we always have that, be able to see all those things. And please, I think you're probably more stingy with the conditions. Put those in, and maybe that'll be alleviated by people coming in ahead of time and discussing things and changing the application process or something. But
Well,
that's,
that's something we've discussed.
I
It
know,
poses
yes.
a whole additional set of legal problems when you do that.
well, and
And
then, I
that
mean,
hasn't been resolved.
understand. And maybe that just means, maybe people have to come back, I guess, if.
Well, yeah, I think we've tried to accommodate, people's minor changes, but I think if it is major, certainly needs to,
No, and I understand, and I don't fault you, I know what you're
Yeah.
under in terms of your constraints. The last thing I wanted to do is revisit something that I emailed Beverly after the September meeting, which was at the corner of South Wayne and Audubon. I believe it was the Heldrings it was an application, it wasn't one of the applications, they had already come in prior that year, and came back in because they had some changes, and the change is really significant, we're still falling under the scope, but there was no vote on that, it was just, show us what you have. And the changes were significant enough that it should have been an application, or, if the process was changed, maybe that would be alleviated in that sense. But what I'd just like to see is, I think that needs to be corrected, because if you look at what they got approved, what they're going to build, whilst they're perfectly acceptable, I'm not saying they shouldn't build it,
But it-
is not, according to what their certificate of appropriateness is. And I don't think they should be penalized. I actually think perhaps you should recommend to the Board of Commissioners that the Heldrings come in, do a quick show, here at the Harb of what the plans were, so they can get a formal approval, waive their fees, since it wasn't through any fault of their own that they did this, just to make that right, and so we don't have that hanging out, and that will also help set a precedence that,
Right.
of what that is. Because the changes they had were significant. They were fine, but they were
yeah,
significant.
I see what you're saying. And to make it more consistent with what's built and what the plan would
Yes,
show.
because there's going to be inconsistency, and we don't want that to fall on them. And a lot of time, and there's too many things in this township where we say we'll correct it next time, and it never does. So not only does the old one happen, but then new occurrences happen, because that's the mindset, and things don't get
Right.
changed.
No, that makes
So
sense.
That would be appreciated if that could be revisited then.
Makes a lot of
For their
sense.
sake, if, not only
That's
the
true,
township,
too.
so.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you for commenting. I think we are done.
Anyone else?
I'll adjourn again.